bloques. Se reúnen a esta hora Naciones Unidas, la ONU. Se reúne a esta hora con los países bloques para rechazar el ataque de Israel a Irán y la intervención de los Estados Unidos. Están solicitando el cese inmediato de hostilidades y el respeto al derecho internacional y la Carta de la ONU. Pero vamos de inmediato y ahorita vamos a tener los detalles de todo lo que se habló o se está tratando en esta reunión de carácter urgente luego de las situaciones que se han suscitado en Medio Oriente. Vamos a compartirles a todos ustedes lo que se está viviendo a esta hora en la reunión donde los países bloques como China, Rusia, el secretario de la ONU y los altos funcionarios están denunciando los ataques que para ellos no son lícitos en estos momentos. Pero vamos a contarles a todos ustedes, después de esto tendremos el resumen y a las 7 de la noche vamos a estar con toda la información por nuestro canal de Bajume TV Latino, contándoles todo lo que está pasando en Medio Oriente. A esta hora tenemos la información en vivo y en directo desde la reunión que se lleva a cabo en la ONU.
Today's escalation. Our aim should be to return to substantial negotiations towards a peaceful settlement in line with international law and the UN Charter. As the Council meets in this critical moment, we would like
estamos escuchando perfectamente las declaraciones a esta hora.
The risk for a wider regional confrontation with potentially
está hablando de la
consequences for international peace and security.
Grecia está interviniendo.
Absent a swift diplomatic solution, we might now
Están buscando una solución diplomática a toda la situación que se está viviendo en Medio Oriente. Recordemos que estamos en estado de guerra en estos momentos. Las imágenes que vemos son de Naciones Unidas que están haciendo la intervención los diferentes países en busca de una solución a este conflicto que tiene una gran escala en estos momentos y que representaría o posiblemente podría representar una guerra a mayor escala, esperemos, no la tercera guerra mundial, pero sí una guerra muy peligrosa para todos los países del mundo.
Iran must never be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon. The accumulation of significant quantities of uranium enriched up to 60% by a non-nuclear weapon state raises serious proliferation concerns and has no credible civilian justification. Full cooperation with the IAEA
quiere full cooperación de los organismos internacionales.
It is widely believed that strong, permanent and verifiable oversight on Iran's nuclear and ballistic programs is a precondition for stability in the region. Diplomacy, grounded in verification and transparency, remains the only sustainable path forward. Third, maritime security in the Gulf, the Straits of Hormuz, and the Red Sea must be fully respected by all sides. Even more now, of all times, stability is of the utmost importance. We urge Iran and its allies in the region to refrain from any retaliatory action that could endanger freedom of navigation, threaten commercial shipping, or further destabilize global energy and trade flows, constituting a blatant violation of the international law of the sea as reflected in UNCLOS. Fourth, the protection of civilians must prevail. Failure is not an option. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Greece for the statement.
Grecia acaba de dar sus aspectos y condiciones a esta situación,
Thank you, Mr.
de acuerdo a
President.
lo que ellos están
I
solicitando
have the honor to
ante la
deliver
ONU.
this statement on behalf of the A3 members of the Security Council, namely the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Liberia, and my own country, Somalia. We thank the presidency for promptly convening this emergency meeting on the situation in the Middle East. The A3 thanks the Secretary General for his thorough update on this worrying and rapidly evolving development in the Middle East and its implications on international peace and security. We also echo the Secretary General's message of today's military escalation in the Middle East. We welcome the representative of Iran to this meeting. Mr. President, the A3 aligns itself with the statement of the chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, the U.S.-Iran military escalation issued on February 28th of 2026. The reported military strikes carried out by the United States in coordination with their Israeli forces against targets inside the Islamic Republic of Iran and Iran's subsequent response represents a perilous and deeply troubling escalation, one that marks a serious intensification of hostilities in the Middle East and threatens to engulf the entire region in an uncontrollable cycle of violence, suffering, and pain. The A3 condemns the missiles and drone attacks carried out by Iran against the sovereign territories of Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. The A3 reiterates that all member states must respect their obligations under international law, including the Charter, which prohibits the threat of the use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. These actions risk further destabilizing the Middle East and underscore the urgent imperative to safeguard broader peace and internal stability, particularly as the geographic scope of military activity expands beyond the initial parties to the conflict. The A3 remains steadfast in its commitment to the fundamental principles of international law and the Charter of the United Nations. At the same time, the A3 recognizes the concerns of all states in the region, which must be addressed through dialogue and peaceful means in accordance with international law and the UN Charter. We believe that all member states share a responsibility to act in accordance with these commitments, and that these are essential foundations for international cooperation and peaceful coexistence. Mr. President, the A3 calls for restraint, urgent de-escalation.
Actualmente a esta hora se discute todo lo que se está viviendo porque es bastante delicada la situación y nadie quiere ser víctima de una guerra o presenciar una guerra a gran escala. Por ello estamos viendo las consecuencias de todo lo que se está viviendo y los países están reunidos a esta hora debatiendo esta situación porque lo que quieren es evitar que esto se vuelva algo fuera de control y que nadie pueda realmente detener una guerra que podría convertirse en algo incontrolable. Por ello, cada uno de los países están dando sus puntos de vista en esta junta de la ONU a esta hora, mostrando la preocupación del respeto al derecho internacional humanitario y obviamente están los países a favor, pero también los países en contra. Muchos de los países han coincidido en algo y es que no quieren que se creen bombas nucleares en Irán. Vamos a seguir escuchando lo que está aconteciendo en estos momentos en este Consejo Nacional de la ONU, que es tan importante a nivel mundial, a nivel internacional, sobre todo para evitar entrar en este conflicto que se convierta en algo mayor y peligroso. Ahora mismo está informando Latvia. Aquí está Latvia haciendo presencia. Bueno, dice que Irán está siendo un actor maligno y que en reiteradas ocasiones de manera sistemática ha representado una amenaza para la paz.
And to grant monitors access to installations. And this is unacceptable. Iran must cease its illegal nuclear program, comply with its international obligations, and return to the negotiating table. For decades, Iran has maintained terror as its modus operandi. Iran has supported, armed, financed, and trained terrorists
Está mencionando
such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. It has enabled and emboldened
las
attacks against
leyes
countries near and
que
afar.
con de manera reiterada Irán ha violado.
It has promoted radicalization and the spread of terrorism and undermined global energy and maritime security. Beyond the Middle East, Iran has directly supported Russia's war of aggression.
Dice que el régimen ha mantenido abiertamente su programa nuclear. Ahí está el líder de Irán Islámico haciendo también presencia. Pero vamos a escuchar lo que están informando hasta ahora.
And like Russia in Ukraine, Iran is now bringing terror to innocent civilians in the Gulf countries. Latvia stands with the brave people of Iran, brave people that have endured so much, decades of brutality and repression. Recently, this council met to address the atrocities perpetrated by the Islamic regime against its own people in the streets of Iran. Latvia and the European Union have already imposed sanctions against the IRGC. The Iranian people must be able to determine their own future, free from violence and repression. Mr. President, Latvia joins the call for an immediate cessation of hostilities and urgent de-escalation. We call on all sides to protect civilians and avoid further escalation. Latvia condemns the unprovoked Iranian strikes against countries in the region, namely our fellow member of the Council, Bahrain, and Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates. Strikes on these countries constitute a threat to regional and international peace and security, and we stand in solidarity with our partners. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Latvia for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of the United Kingdom. I thank the Secretary General for his briefing. Colleagues, this is a fragile moment for the Middle East. The United Kingdom played no role in the strikes against Iran. But we are under no illusion about the nature of the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime murdered thousands of its own people simply for exercising their fundamental rights and freedoms. Iran has repeatedly ignored calls to find a durable and acceptable solution to the nuclear issue, while continuing to destabilize the region through its support to proxies and partners. We strongly condemn Iranian strikes across the region, including the attacks on a hotel in Dubai, the attack on Kuwait's civilian airport, and attacks on civilian targets in Bahrain. We extend our support and solidarity to all our partners, many of which are not parties to the conflict. Regional stability remains a priority. As my Prime Minister stated, UK forces are active and British planes are in the sky today as part of coordinated regional defensive operations to protect our people and regional partners, as the United Kingdom has done before and in line with international law. Reports of strikes on civilians and civilian infrastructure are deeply alarming. The protection for international law is critical. Iran must never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. That is why we, alongside our French and German partners, have continually supported efforts to reach a negotiated solution. We have always been clear that only a diplomatic solution can fully and sustainably address these threats. We want to see the swiftest possible resolution that ensures security and stability for the region. Iran must refrain from further strikes and its appalling behavior to allow a path back to diplomacy. We will continue to work with our partners to this end in support of peace and security, protection of civilian life across the region. I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
In the name of God, the compassionate and merciful, we appreciate the Secretary General for his briefing and his contribution to this meeting. We express our sincere appreciation to the Russian Federation and China for supporting the convening of this emergency meeting of the Security Council to address the manifest aggression committed by the United States and Israeli regime. I also thank those council members, in particular China, Pakistan, and the Russian Federation, who have today taken principled position in condemnation this unlawful act. And it is regrettable that some members of this body, a blatant double standard, disregarded the flagrant act of aggression committed by the US and Israel on Iran and condemn Iran for using its inherent right to self-defense on the UN Charter. Mr. President, this morning the United States regime jointly and in coordination with the Israeli regime initiated an unprovoked and premeditated aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran for the second time in the recent months, while deliberately attacking civilian populated areas in multiple large cities of Iran where millions of people reside. As a result of this brutal armed attack, hundreds of civilians have been killed and injured. The aggression and atrocious crime of the United States regime and the Israeli regime and the deliberate and persistent targeting of civilian infrastructure are going. In addition to the numerous civilian residential buildings, the aggressors have also targeted a school in the city of Minab, Hormozgan province, killing more than 100 children. The number of innocent civilians continues to rise. This is not only an act of aggression, it is a war crime and a crime against humanity. Yet today, once again, the representative of the United States, through a regrettable pattern, has attempted to distort facts and rely on misinformation to justify the blatant aggression of the United States and Israel against my country. The facts, however, are unequivocal. The justification advanced by the representative of the United States today are illegal and entirely devoid of legal foundation. The baseless allegation invoked to defend this unlawful use of force have no standing under international law. The invocation of preemptive attack claims of imminent threats or other substantiated political claims cannot legitimize aggression. Such claims are unfounded legally, morally, and politically, and they contradicted the clear principles of the Charter of the United Nations. I also categorically reject The assertion made by the representative of France, the United Kingdom, and certain other Western members regarding Iran's peaceful nuclear program. These claims lack a factual and legal basis. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the Israeli regime have openly claimed responsibility for this act of aggression and have explicitly articulated regime change as their objective, an unmistakable admission of their intent to violate Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The President of the United States has falsely described this aggression as necessary to neutralize an imminent threat to the American people. This is nothing more than a deliberate attempt to mislead the international community and the US public opinion and manufacture consent for unlawful war. Similarly, the representative of the United States has cynically sought to mislead this council, yet history provides ample documentation that the foreign policy of the United States has repeatedly relied on unlawful force, covert intervention, and political manipulation to alter the governments of other member states. This record is well established. The reality is clear and undeniable. What is taking place today against my country by the United States and the terrorist regime of Israel is a blatant act of aggression, a full-fledged violation of international law. No justification, no accusation, no narrative of disinformation can legitimize or excuse this manifest crime and aggression. Mr. President, we have communicated on several occasions with this Council and the Secretary General about warmongering statement and interfering actions in the internal affairs of Iran by the President of the US in a blatant violation of the UN Charter and international law, and called for the Council action. Regrettably, all were unanswered. The issue before the Council is straightforward: whether any member state may, including a permanent member of this Council, through the use of force, coercion, or aggression, determine the political future of another state or impose control over its affairs. International law and the Charter are explicit on this matter. Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the Charter categorically prohibits the threats of use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. Mr. President, against this backdrop, I would like to make the following points. 1. What is occurring against my country is a clear act of aggression. It is an open armed aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran. The United States and Israel war today is not merely a war against Iran. It is a war against the Charter of the United Nations, a war against international law, and a war against the international legal order upon which the United Nations and the Security Council have been built for over 8 decades. As the Charter affirms, the United Nations was established to save succeeding generations from a scourge of war. The Charter, adopted in 1945, is founded upon this fundamental principle. Members shall refrain from threat or use of force in international relations. The sole exception is the inherent right of self-defense under Article 51, and only in the event of an armed attack. The military aggression carried out by the United States and Israel satisfies none of the criteria of lawful self-defense. Accordingly, the action of the United States and Israel constitute a manifest violation of Article 2, a peremptory norms and a fundamental principle of international law accepted by all member states. Neither the Charter nor international law recognize internal matters of states as justification for the use of force by other states. Were this otherwise, no international legal order could endure. the rule of law would be replaced by the rule of force. 2. In responding to aggression on large-scale war, the Islamic Republic of Iran is exercising its inherent unlawful right of self-defense under Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations. The armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran are utilizing all the necessary defensive capabilities and means to confront this criminal aggression and deter the hostile acts. Consequently, all bases, facilities, and assets of the hostile forces in the region shall be regarded as legitimate military objective within the framework of Iran's lawful exercise of self-defense. Iran will continue to exercise its right of self-defense decisively and without hesitation until the aggression ceases in full and unequivocal terms. 3. Iran remains firmly committed to respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of its neighboring countries. Under no circumstances will we target the sovereignty, people, or interests of our neighboring countries in the Persian Gulf. Our legitimate response have been directed solely and exclusively
El líder
at the
iraní está
bases and assets
calificando que
of the
los
hostile
hechos
government of the
cometidos
United
por
States that
Israel e
operate
Estados
beyond the
Unidos
control of
constituyen
the
una
host
violación
states.
a los derechos
Priority has
establecidos
been
en
given
la
to the
Carta de la
targets that
ONU.
diminish the aggressor capability and capacity to continue its malign actions. We had previously and formally conveyed this warning to the Secretary General and the Security Council. 4. Despite continuous U.S. hostile policy, we were sincerely and seriously pursuing the path of diplomacy and dialogue to reach a just, fair, and sustainable agreement. Yet, for the second time in the midst of the negotiation, the United States betrayed diplomacy and resorted to force and launched an attack against my country in blatant violation of Charter of the United Nations, presently interfering in Iran's internal affairs. They are even calling on the people to riot against their own government. The recent record of the United States toward Iran is
Acaba de informar que todas las bases militares que se
2025,
encuentren muy cerca a Irán o en los
restated the
alrededores
hostile approach,
serán
including the policy
objetivo
of so-called
militar.
maximum
Esto está
pressure
hablando de
and
las bases
economic
militares de Estados Unidos
strangulation
y todo lo
through
que tiene que ver
sweeping
con Israel.
sanctions. The General Assembly has repeatedly voted by overwhelming majorities against such unilateral coercive measures. The objective of these illegal measures has been transparent, unconditional surrender. Despite repeated warning by Iran to the Secretary General and the Council regarding serious violation of the Charter by a permanent member, the Council has regrettably failed to discharge its primary responsibility, allowing the erosion of the rule of law in favor of the rule of force. 5. Just as the Israeli regime succeeded in dragging the United States into the quagmire of war with Iran, the United States in turn is deliberately seeking to expand the scope of the conflict by exploiting spaces in the Persian Gulf region. The hostile US government dream of swallowing Iran and forcing the Islamic Republic of Iran into submission will never be realized. This war, before being a contest of military equipment and advanced technologies, is a battle of wills, and in that battle, the Islamic Republic of Iran will prevail. Furthermore, the Islamic Republic of Iran has repeatedly affirmed its commitment to diplomacy and negotiation. However, it will never submit to pressure, coercion, or force. Diplomacy has rules and principles. It cannot coexist with aggression. 6. The duty of Council members is to defend international law and specifically the Charter. They are not called upon to judge the political system of states, nor to determine whether military aggression or economic siege leads to freedom or domination. Expression of concerns and empty condemnation are not sufficient. The Council must act. Pursuant to Article 39 of the Charter, the Security Council must immediately determine the United States and Israeli regime have committed an act of aggression and demand the immediate cessation of its unlawful use of force, including any explicit or implicit threats against Iran, and require binding assurance of non-repetition. Affirm that the United States and Israeli regime bear full international responsibility for all materials and moral damage inflicted upon the infrastructure and facilities of the Islamic Republic of Iran and are obligated to provide full reparation. Let me conclude, Mr. President, with a simple and undeniable truth. Israel and the United States have attacked Iran. They have violated international law and the Charter of the United Nations. They must be held accountable. So long as this aggression continues, Iran will continue to exercise its inherent right of self-defense firmly, proportionately, and without hesitation until the aggression ends. The Security Council must act now and stop this act of aggression immediately. Silence is complicity in this crime. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Mr. President, for 47 years, the Islamic regime in Iran has led crowds in chanting, March bar Israel, March bar America. Mr. Iravani, do you want to translate these chants? Your leaders have been chanting it for years in public events, in your parliament. March bar Israel, March bar America. They mean death to Israel, death to America. Israeli and American flags were painted on roads so they could be trampled. Our flags were burned in public squares. This is not the anger of a radical fringe. It is state-sanctioned hatred. And while those March bar chants echoed, uranium was enriched, centrifuges span, missiles were built, facilities were buried deep underground. It was never just empty rhetoric. It was preparation for action. But today, alongside our ally, the United States, we act to stop it. Israel stands before you today, having acted with the United States to confront and stop an existential threat before it became irreversible. The operation targets nuclear infrastructure, ballistic missile sites, the machinery of repression that fuels terror across our region. We did not act of impulse. We did not act of aggression. We acted out of necessity because the Iranian regime left no reasonable alternative. This joint effort will continue for as long as the threat remains. We thank President Trump and acknowledge the close cooperation between Israel and the US, which has brought the alliance between our countries to an all-time high in peace and in war. Let us be clear about what we are confronting. This regime has built nuclear weapons in blatant disregard of international law and UN resolutions. It has brutally murdered its own citizens and crushed dissent. It's happened now as we speak in cities in Iran. It has expanded missile arsenals and armed proxies across the region. It has openly declared its intention to erase Israel from the map. Now, and it faces consequences
El líder de Israel
It is launching
está ahora
missiles
mismo
and drones
hablando al
across the
público
region,
y está dando a
endangering
conocer
the
que
UAE,
muchos
where a
años, durante
Pakistani citizen
47 años, les
unfortunately
ha
was
tocado
killed.
ver cómo desde
Jordan,
el gobierno iraní
Kuwait,
pide muerte a
Bahrain,
Israel, muerte
Qatar,
a Estados Unidos.
Iraq.
Y es lo que él está haciendo en
As
esta
we
hora, la
speak, in the last
defensa
hour,
de
a rocket
por
targeted
qué
the city
este
of Tel
ataque.
Aviv.
Vamos a seguir
Civilian, they
escuchando
don't target military
atentamente
bases.
lo que dice este
Civilians
líder.
struck a building in Tel Aviv. An innocent woman was killed and 21 people were
No
injured.
actuamos por agresión, lo hicimos por
This is
necesidad.
a regime that destabilizes wherever it
No
reaches.
nos dejó otra alternativa
It spreads
razonable.
violence outward while crushing freedom at home. It is not reacting.
Seguiremos nuestros esfuerzos
expanding.
mancomunados mientras
It is a
persista
machinery
la
of
amenaza.
radicalism that does not recognize borders. Mr. President, diplomacy was exhausted. Iran was required to stop enriching uranium, stop heavy water projects, stop developing nuclear-capable missiles, and allow full inspections. Iran did none of it. Instead, it fortified its nuclear facilities so we cannot get to them, accelerated missile production, and continued to fund terror. Since the last operation in the summer, they spent billions on their proxies. The resolutions were clear. The strategy was just as clear. Delay, delay, delay. But we will not be played. And it's simple what they were planning. They were building the means to corner us, to force an irreversible reality with our backs against the wall. That is not a future Israel will accept. No responsible nation should. This operation is guided by clear objectives: eliminate immediate threats, dismantle the nuclear program, destroy its ballistic missile production, neutralize naval threats, break the proxy network that destabilizes the region. The operation was carried out in order to protect the people of Israel within the framework of the ongoing armed conflict between Israel and Iran, in line with the UN Charter and in accordance with international law. Our forces stand ready to stop extremism armed with nuclear weapons. To the soldiers of the IDF, our boys and girls, my son, my daughter, we salute you. You stand like lions defending our people. An entire nation stands behind you. We have heard the condemnation from few member states, from the Secretary General, but we all know that escalation did not begin today. It began when Iran armed proxies and exported terror, expanded missiles and drones, advanced its nuclear program in violation of its commitments, turned on its own people, beating, imprisoning, executing. Where was the outrage of the UN? Where were the consequences? Now, Israel acts to prevent an irreversible threat, and the condemnation is immediate. This is the definition of hypocrisy. Some call this aggression. We call it necessity. We call it survival. Mr. President, history has taught us never to ignore those who openly call for our destruction. When a regime says it will destroy Israel, when it chants death to Israel, when it promises to wipe Haifa and Tel Aviv off the map, we believe it. We genuinely believe it when we see those hundreds of ballistic missiles that they are launching to Israel. We believe the threats. We do not ignore them. We do not gamble with our survival. We act. Now let me address the brave people of Iran. You are not our enemies. This operation is not directed at you. It is directed at a regime that has silenced you, imprisoned you, and invested in missiles and uranium while your economy suffers. You deserve better. It is this regime, the Basij, the Revolutionary Guard, who have dragged your country into isolation. The world does not fear a free Iran. It fears a radical regime armed with nuclear weapons and driven by extremism. Your future should not be defined by those who chant for death. As President Trump has said, the Iranian people deserve dignity, security, and the chance to shape their own destiny. We are thinking about you. You are seen. You are not alone. The future of Iran belongs to its people. We stand with you. Mr. President, this week, Jewish families all around the world celebrate Purim. Many Israelis will do so now in a bomb shelter. The story of Purim happened more than 2,500 years ago in the same place. In ancient Persia, an evil minister by the name of Haman sought to wipe out the Jewish people. And it began with words, with chants. It became a decree. It could have become a genocide. But Queen Esther refused to remain silent. She stepped forward. She spoke up. She acted before it was too late. That is the lesson we learned. It is not only an ancient lesson, it is a modern one. Last week, I stood at the gates of Auschwitz with dozens of UN ambassadors. We stood in a place that shows what happens when radicalism and extremism grows and no one stops it in time. Before the Holocaust, some leaders, serious leaders, believed that they could calm aggression with concessions. They were completely wrong. Giving in did not stop evil. It strengthened it. Winston Churchill understood what Queen Esther understood long before him. When destruction is declared and weapons are being prepared and assembled, leaders must act, not later, now. Today, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu understand that same lesson. For decades, the Iranian regime has built missiles, enriched uranium, armed proxies, and spread terror far beyond its borders. This regime is not only Israel's enemy. It is an enemy of stability, an enemy of every peace-loving nation. In this joint operation, Israel and the US are acting together, not because we see conflict, because we refuse to ignore declared destruction. We are stopping extremism before it becomes unstoppable. We will ensure that no radical regime armed with nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles can threaten our people or the entire world. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Israel for the statement. I will now give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Majid A. Abdulaziz, Permanent Observer of the League of Arab States to the United Nations.
Shukran.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the Presidency for convening this emergency session today. I also extend my thanks to the Secretary General for his powerful and comprehensive briefing. The Security Council convenes today at a pivotal moment in the history of the United Nations, a moment that unfortunately represents a glaring failure of the multilateral international system, a failure the League of Arab States has long warned against. Regrettably, it is a moment in which the Arab-Israeli conflict has expanded into a full-scale regional war, through which Israel seeks, through this escalation, to evade ending its occupation of Palestinian territories, to prevent the establishment of an independent Palestinian state, and to obstruct Palestine's admission to the UN in implementation of the two-state solution and the core principles of international legitimacy. Israel has done so by expanding the scope of its brutal military aggression against the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank, by intensifying its efforts to annex the West Bank, and through repeated military attacks on Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Iran, all in a misguided attempt that is categorically rejected both regionally and internationally to impose Israel's hegemony on the Middle East by using military means. Even if it is at the expense of the member states of the League of Arab States and at the expense of the suffering of their peoples under Israeli policies and attacks aimed at imposing the law of force instead of the force of law. At the Council's previous meeting on this item last week, the Foreign Minister of Israel, the occupying power, made extremist religious assertions, thus offering clear evidence of the arrogance of Israel, which seeks to impose its own extremist religious interpretation on the word, claiming that all Palestinian land, including the West Bank, which cannot be annexed under President Trump's plan and under Security Council Resolution 2803, all this Palestinian land has belonged to Israel for thousands of years. Such claims reflect an unmistakable contempt for the legal, historical, and foundational principles upon which international legitimacy have been built in this council and in this organization. Despite the announcement 2 days ago in Geneva that negotiations between the United States and Iran on the Iranian nuclear file has made some progress, Israel has blatantly disregarded all these developments in pursuit of narrow, self-serving interests. It has launched a wanton military attack at dawn today against the Islamic Republic of Iran, claiming that the attack was intended to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. At the same time, Israel itself refuses to join the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. It refuses to subject its nuclear facilities to the IAEA's comprehensive safeguards regime, and it refuses at the same time to attend the United Nations Conference on the establishment of a Middle East zone free of nuclear weapons and other WMDs. That conference, held for the 7th consecutive year at the United Nations last November, with the active participation of the Islamic Republic of Iran in all its sessions, and with the continued boycott of Israel and one permanent member of this council. This Israeli boycott of this important conference is clear, although the conference seeks to achieve the same goal, which is to eliminate the ambiguous nuclear capabilities, both Israeli and Iranian. And this Israeli stand reflects the fact that Israel wants to remain the only state acquiring ambiguous nuclear capabilities in the Middle East and capable of producing nuclear weapons, which is something that Middle East countries cannot accept. Mr. President, despite all the above, the clear escalation among all parties amounts to a cowardly and unjustified military assault by the Islamic Republic of Iran on several Arab states that are members of the League of Arab States. This escalation threatens to widen the scope of the military conflict and risks igniting a full-scale regional war. The General Secretariat of the League of Arab States have issued an official statement from which I quote: The General Secretariat of the League of Arab States strongly condemns the Iranian attacks on the State of Qatar, the Kingdom of Bahrain, the State of Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. And I add the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Lebanon. These missile attacks constitute a blatant violation of the sovereignty of states that advocate for peace and have worked to advance stability and did not participate in the war. The General Secretariat expresses full solidarity with these Arab states in confronting these attacks and affirms its support for any measures they take to defend themselves and to protect their populations. The Secretariat stresses that Arab states have taken clear positions regarding the Iranian crisis by rejecting military action against Tehran. Several Arab states exerted tremendous efforts to further mediation and to prevent the escalation we are witnessing today. The General Secretariat is deeply concerned by the grave dangers posed by the current situation in the region. It calls upon all influential parties in the international community to act immediately to de-escalate as quickly as possible, to prevent the expansion of regional instability and violence, and return immediately to dialogue. End of quote. In conclusion, Mr. President, the League of Arab States joins the Secretary General of the United Nations in urging all states to respect their obligations under international law, including the UN Charter, which clearly prohibits the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, and prohibits any use of force inconsistent with the purposes and principles of the United Nations, especially when it involves attacking nuclear facilities, which could have catastrophic consequences for entire populations. The League also joins the United Nations in calling for an immediate cessation of hostilities and de-escalation to prevent a wider regional conflict that would have dire repercussions for regional stability in the Middle East. From this standpoint, the League of Arab States urges the Security Council, particularly with the United States assuming the Council's presidency beginning tomorrow, to lead the collective security regime, to immediately halt military operations, and to return to negotiations on all tracks, inspired by the positive momentum generated by last week's Board of Peace meeting and by the role of President Trump in advancing global peace, and in full respect for the established mechanisms of the multilateral international system, far from any geopolitical confrontations that will only prevent us from achieving global peace. Thank you, President.
Thank you, His Excellency, Mr. Abdulaziz, for the statement. The representative of the United States has asked for the floor to make the statement.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I wish to exercise my right of reply to the so-called representative of the Iranian regime. The United States strongly rejects this ridiculous and frankly farcical assertion that U.S. actions are inconsistent with international law. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted, quote, "Death to America," at every turn, at every opening of its parliament. It has sought to eradicate the state of Israel. It has waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder. It is responsible for a series of unprovoked armed attacks targeting the United States and Israel, violations of the UN Charter, and threats to international peace and security across the Middle East. It has even attempted to assassinate the U.S. president, President Trump. It has done so not only directly, but through its proxies, seeking to hide and mask its bad actions while publicly claiming to be a victim. Iran's menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, our partners, our allies around the world. The United States has made every effort to negotiate a peaceful resolution of this conflict with Iran, but Iran has failed to take that opportunity. So in close coordination with the government of Israel, the United States has taken lawful actions to address these threats in line with Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations. And Mr. President, I'll just say on a final note, you know who is not complaining tonight? You know who is not citing the vagaries of international law? You know who is celebrating in the streets around the world? The Iranian people. Mr. President, maybe, perhaps just maybe, they will finally be free. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for the statement. The representative of Bahrain has also asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize for taking the floor once again. I would like to reread a paragraph from the statement of the GCC countries, Jordan and Syria. Accurately, it is as follows, and I quote, "As we have pointed out in the letter addressed to you today, a number of Iranian missile attacks have targeted today the UAE, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the State of Qatar, the State of Kuwait, and my country, the Kingdom of Bahrain, and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, and the Syrian Arab Republic, in a flagrant violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of these countries." I thank you.
I thank the representative of Bahrain for the statement. The representative of Iran has asked for the floor to make a further statement.
Thank you. I have one word only. I advise to the representative of the United States to be polite. It will be better for yourself and the country you represented. Thank you.
The representative of the United States has asked for the floor to make a further statement.
Frankly, I'm not going to dignify this with another response, especially as this representative sits here in this body representing a regime that has killed tens of thousands of its own people and imprisoned many more simply for wanting freedom from your tyranny. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. Before adjourning the meeting, as this is really the last meeting of our presidency in the month of February, I would just like to express my thanks on behalf of the delegation of the United Kingdom to members of the Council, the Secretary General, and members of the Secretariat for all their support this month. The meeting is adjourned.
se ha logrado ningún tipo de acuerdo, simplemente se logró una conversación, escuchar a los diferentes países y sus opiniones respecto a lo que está pasando. Estados Unidos presentó su defensa, el porqué de la justificación del ataque, asimismo lo hizo Israel y también Irán presentó su defensa respecto a lo que está aconteciendo en este país. En la actualidad también sabemos que muchas personas estaban muriendo alrededor de las protestas que se suscitaron en los últimos días en Irán con la búsqueda de un pueblo que quería libertad. Pero a las 7 de la noche vamos a tener un resumen de lo que ha expresado Netanyahu y también de lo que ha expresado el presidente Donald Trump y todas las afirmaciones del resumen de todo lo que aconteció aquí en este Consejo de la ONU de carácter urgente. Yo soy Vanessa Díaz y te invito a que te suscribas a nuestro canal de Bajume TV Latino y que hagas parte de toda la información que tenemos para todos ustedes desde los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica. Bendiciones y feliz resto de noche. A las 7 de la noche nos vemos con más